Once upon a time, a giantess had herself 3 children. One was a beautiful girl with long dark hair, the other was a big wolf, and the third a giant snake. Their father, a famous trickster called Loki. All 3 destined to take part in Ragnarök, and the cancellation of great gods. Let's get into it.
This day, Bruce had the final
Many have probably already heard of the mischievous god Loki, but not as many have heard of his mistress, his giant mistress, Ångerboda. Which isn't weird at all, because she's only mentioned once, and that is in the Pros Edda, which was a compilation of narrative poems and songs from around 800 to 1000 AD, and the oldest written record that survived is from 1200 AD. There she is shortly mentioned as the mate of Loki and the mother of monsters. She's a giantess, or a jätte, and so was Loki. He was at least part jätte. And they got together in secret because Odin did not approve, and from these meetings over days and nights, Ångerboda would bring forth 3 monsters. One of them, a beautiful young girl, scary stuff, and the second, a giant wolf, which wasn't that giant to begin with, and the third, a big old snake. Ångerboda's name actually translates into, well, roughly, to the one who brings grief. Ånger in today's Swedish is actually translated into regret, and boda is like förboda, which means to herald, a prophecy, omen, something like that.
So nothing good could come out of it. So nothing good, oh my god. So obviously nothing good could come out of this giantess. Especially if you mix it with Loki. Yeah. They would live with their mother Ångerboda in peace until Uden, the king of the gods, had himself a nightmare, and in this nightmare he was devoured by a giant wolf. Sad times. Uden felt extra strongly about this when he heard from the ödesgudinnorna, or the goddesses of fate. They prophesied that bad things would happen if you let them roam. Well, they could see into the future, so I guess they couldn't really stop it. They could only push it up, like me and the dishes at the moment. Either way, they told Odin, their mother is evil, but their father is worse. Expect nothing but disaster and mischief from them. And Odin took that personally. He went to Ångerboda's abode to pick them up. And it didn't take long for him to see that he was right in doing so. When they were transporting the 3 monstrous children to Asgard, they noticed that the snake had grown a lot during the small trip. Also, the wolf. And for some reason, the girl was just scary. Well, in some stories, she already has like a beautiful side and a corpsey side, and in some stories, she was just a young, beautiful girl. Either way, Odin saw the disaster and he decided to act upon it. He took the snake called Midgårdsormen and threw it into the deep dark ocean. He took the girl called
Hel and threw her down into the netherworlds called Niflheim. And then he looked at the wolf called Fenrir and thought, it's a dog, what can it do? Let's keep him. Because, of course, the girl seemed more of a threat than the giant wolf. Now that we have all that out of the way, let's start with these monstrous children. And the first one we're talking about is the girl, Hel. And her name translates roughly into the Fördolda, which is the hidden. Hel landed with a bang down in Niflheim. Her fall and subsequent boom disfigured her greatly. She became crooked, a cripple, and half her body, once it landed, became that of a rotten skeleton, and the other half a blue corpse. Odin saw this and gave her reign over her own kingdom down in Niflheim, which would be called Hel or Helheim. And Hel took on the job with great pleasure. No, but she actually, she did the thing. Into her afterlife, or deathly kingdom, would come anyone who had died an unnotable death or of sickness and old age. So basically pretty much 90% of everyone. Even gods would end up in Hel's hall. You could say that her home was pretty gloomy, and I'm basing that on the names she gave her things. Her bed was called sjukläger, very roughly translated into sick bed. Her plate was called hunger. Her knife was called svält, starvation or famine. And her thralls that helped her with everything were called gånglate and gånglata, which very roughly translate into walking lazily or lazy walk. I guess it's hard to find good servants down there. The most famous guest into Hel's abode was Balder, who was, of course, cancelled of his life subscription by being shot in the chest with a mistletoe, thanks to Hel's own father, Loki. All the gods were very sad over this whole thing, so they came down to Hel and tried to negotiate with her and let her release Balder up back into the world of the living. And Hel said, yeah, I'll do that if you get everything and everyone, living and dead, to cry for him. And the gods went to it and traveled through the entire universe and cosmos and made everyone cry for Balder except a giantess who refused. Who was actually just Loki in disguise. So there we go. Balder was stuck down there with Hel. Hel was said to take part in the Ragnarök by helping her father Loki, giving him access to her giant boat called Nagelfar, which was made out of the fingernails of the deceased. So please cut the nails of anyone before you bury them. And also an army of previously alive people. That's the story of Hel. Then we have our lovely Midgårdsorm. Midgårdsormen, the giant snake that grew big and strong down there in the bottom of the world ocean. He was mostly in the stories Thor's nemesis. They were on each other's throat. It all started when Thor was visiting some jättar And they told him that, ah, God, you're not that strong, Thor. And Thor was like,
Oh my god, yes, I am so strong.
and they told him, you can't even carry this giant cat that they had. In truth, the cat was actually Midgårdsormen, disguised by magic into a cat. That is a pretty heavy cat, because it's not a cat, it's a giant snake. And Thor tried, and he could only lift it so that one of his paws left the floor, which is still very strong. Thor felt defeated and humiliated, and once he found out that it wasn't actually a giant cat, it was a giant snake, he never really let go of that resentment. So, one time when he was out fishing, he managed to catch the Midgårdsorm and brought him up, and he hit the Midgårdsorm hard with his hammer onto the Midgårdsorm snake's head. He hit the Midgårdsorm over the head with his giant hammer. All fun and games. But once Ragnarök finally arrived, Midgårdsormen would take the life of Thor by his venom, but not before Thor cancelled the life subscription of the Midgårdsorm first. It's said that he demised the Midgårdsorm and then got to walk 9 steps before he, poof, dearly departed. And then we end it with the third monstrous child, Fenrir the wolf. As I said, the gods first didn't see the harm in this puppy. So they brought him along into Asgard and let him roam free and run around the giant meadows and stuff like that, until he became very, very large and aggressive. They decided that it was in everyone's best interest that the wolf did not dearly depart them all. They decided that they would trick Fenrir by chaining him up, which was a hard task in itself. They told Fenrir that he was gonna test a chain which was unbreakable to show his strength. And Fenrir was like, oh god, yeah, I can do that. And he did it. He broke 2 chains that were unbreakable. And everyone cheered. But inside they were dying. They put their little heads together and decided that they needed the help of the dwarfs. They went down and asked them to make a truly unbreakable chain. And the dwarfs did. They gave them a dainty little ribbon. But this ribbon was magic. It was made out of the beards of women, the breath of a fish, and the sound a cat makes when it moves. Fenrir, though, wasn't entirely fooled by this little ribbon. I mean, if it is a normal ribbon, it won't give him any satisfaction to break it. And if he doesn't, then it means that it's a magic ribbon and he wants no part of that. But the gods continue to tell him
That, no, we'll let you go if you can't break it.
And eventually Fenrir gives in, but he says that someone needs to place their arm in his mouth as a sign of good faith during the ordeal. He had become close to one of the gods called Tyr, and Tyr went ahead and put his arm into Fenrir's mouth. And we can all guess what happened. Poor Tyr lost his arm because Fenrir could not escape. When he was truly chained by this dainty little ribbon, they took him down and chained him to a cliff. And there he was, well and truly stuck, until Ragnarök. When Ragnarök finally came and the world shook and the cliff poof and the chain woof released, Fenrir fulfilled his prophecy and devoured Odin, and then he was, in the end, cancelled by Odin's son Vidar. So yeah, that was the story of Loki's 3 monstrous children. Please like, comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts, and it really helps with the algorithm. Boost it a little, let more people get some jauntily macabre rambles sent their way. We all need some of that, don't we? Also, giant thanks to my lovely patrons. I'm gonna record another video and post it exclusively up on Patreon, of course. Thank you, you mean the world. Without you, I wouldn't be able to afford my editing software. And yeah. Either way, stay amazing, stay hydrated, and most of all, stay morbid, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!